Now write down important books for history optional. In brackets, write selected few, because why I'm letting you know about the sources. I am asking you not to read that first of all, but still you should know about the sources, because if you reach interview and the interviewer suppose asks that in ancient India, what are the books that you have read? You cannot say that you just marked up the class notes. They were good enough to clear the exam. वहां क्या बताएंगे कि क्लास नोट्स पढ़ के पहुंच गए वहां? That would be difficult. There you have to talk about that this idea I took from this book. Maybe this writer is good. No, that's why some of the books that you should know about. First, write down ancient India, and I'll give you 3 books for each of the section of history optional. 3 books, simple books. Simple books. Why I'm giving you simple books? Because you're not going to be a historian or one archaeologist. You're going to be a bureaucrat. A bureaucrat is a journalist from the Department of Agriculture to Department of Atomic Energy. Anywhere you can be recruited. That is why a very generalist perspective you are looking for to deal with the general administration. The general books that would be accepted by all. First, ancient India. Sabki mummy hai, Ramila Thapar. There is no doubt about this. The first book, Ramila Thapar. Write down ancient India. First book, Ramila Thapar. Second book, everyone would use. Upinder Singh. Upinder Singh. What is the difference between Ramila Thapar's book and Upinder Singh's book? Ramila Thapar is all concept. Upinder Singh is some concept and many facts. So when you talk about very useful facts, very useful facts, like if you talk about Indus Valley Civilization, suppose you talk about Indus Valley Civilization, so there is an IVC site in Afghanistan, and that is short to Gai. Now, जब आप बात करते हैं short to Gai की, to know about short to Gai, that's a unique information. Certainly, then Upinder Singh like book is very helpful. So information from Upinder Singh, concepts from Ramila Thapar. And then if you want to get a general idea about any of the topic, Rachita, Srivatsa, or any, if you want to get the general idea about any topic, like to talk about Mauryan age, then for a very simple read, but a very effective book, is R.S. Sharma. It's R.S. Sharma book. So R.S. Sharma is a very simple book. Then R.S. Sharma, 2 books you will find. One is the 11th standard NCERT old book. This is the Oxford publication. 4 new chapters are part of this book, which are not there in 11th standard NCERT book. And the 4 chapters, they're very important chapters. Like you talk about like identification of Aryan is one of those chapters. So 4 new chapters are there, much more revised the book. This is their minor changes, but excellent changes. So even if you have to buy R.S. Sharma, do not buy the old 11th standard NCERT, buy the Oxford publication. Oxford publication, R.S. Sharma. No need to buy at this stage, but I'm just letting you know that if you have to buy the Oxford one. Now for medieval India, 2 books. Satish Chandra, part 1 and part 2. Now just be careful. Satish Chandra would also be there for the simpler book of Orient Black Swan. 1 part, volume that is. Here we are talking about Satish Chandra, the first and the second part. First part would deal with Delhi Sultanate. The second part would deal with the history of the Mughals. So Satish Chandra, part 1 and part 2. Arani Gayatri Diksha clear with this. Marian clear with this. Shreya, Manjot and Gauri. This is the first class, but next class onward, try to be there on camera so that the classes would be far more interactive. Now, part 1, this is part 2. Mughal Empire time, 1526, Babur. Battle of Panipat, Mughal Empire, and 1748, the decline of Mughals. Up to that time, it's almost covering half of the decline of the Mughals, later Mughals. Then, there's a very small booklet by Irfan Habib. So Irfan Habib has written so much. Excellent writer is Irfan Habib. I will include some of the parts discussed by Irfan Habib, like you talk about whether Alauddin Khalji going for so many changes. About that Khalji revolution was there. Was it really revolutionary or not? Irfan Habib would give very good views. So Irfan Habib, the bigger books are also there, but for a simpler read. So you talk about a simple book that is medieval India, story of a civilization, Irfan Habib. So Irfan Habib, this booklet, it's a very small booklet. It's a very small booklet like NCERT. Then for modern history. For modern history, one book that is the most fabulous read about national movement. That is India's struggle for independence by Bipan Chandra. India's struggle for independence. कशिश थोड़ा और नेटफ्लिक्स देखेंगे तो दूर से आंखें और छोटी करनी पड़ जाएंगी, तो आंखें बचाएंगे. So I talk about Bipan Chandra's India's struggle for independence. Then this would start from the national movement, and the best dealing of national movement is in this book. But before 1857, the book is not describing anything. It would start from the revolt of 1857. So before that part, a very good general idea of modern history that you can get from B.L. Grover. So B.L. Grover has given so many things about like Ranjit Singh, about Tipu Sultan, about the Peshwas, so many things in the modern history before 1857 that you can get from B.L. Grover. B.L. Grover. Abhijayarani, Bhavani, clear with this? Srivatsa, clear? Marin, clear with this? Then a very good book is there. That's a very concise book. Very less facts are there. Some concepts are very good there. Conceptual part is very good. That is S. Bandhopadhyay. From Plasi to Partition was the name of the book earlier. Now it has been revised. Now it comes as and after. So the post-independence part is included in this. So the newer version is good, where the post-independence part has also been included. From Plasi to Partition and after. Nandini is like, ऐसा तो तुमने बोला था ओरिएंटेशन में किताबें नहीं पढ़नी पड़ेंगी. रुक जाइए. Come to that. This is like inclusion of the post-independence part as well. Now write down for world history. For world history, now for world history, there's a problem. Problem is that world history, don't you think that it is the simplest part of the syllabus? Think about it. 3/4 of the syllabus of UPSC deals with Indian history. So it's much in detail. 1/4 of the syllabus, you have to deal with the entire history of the world. Don't you think that it cannot discuss anything in much analysis? You just have to know about the basic details of world history. You cannot go into deep. Because just 1/4 of the syllabus, it is dealing with the entire history of world. There you cannot deal with things in detail. And that is why that would be very concise to start with in world history. There's a very old book, L. Mukherjee. So Calcutta University professor, and very old book this is, very old style book this is, L. Mukherjee. Manjot Kaur, Diksha, Shreya, and Gauri. Just try to be there on camera. L. Mukherjee. Rachita, clear with this? Then again, a very, very good book for the part starting just before the First World War time around. No, just before the First World War time around, a very good book is there by Norman Lowy. Norman Lowy is a very good book. But the problem with the book is that it would start with the time just before the First World War. So the previous part of the world history is not dealt there. Like you talk about French Revolution and so many other things. So many of the other parts you can find in L. Mukherjee, because L. Mukherjee would come in parts, like from 1789 to 1815, from 1815 to 1950, so many parts of L. Mukherjee. There are small booklets they are, very good booklets they are, L. Mukherjee. Then rest of the part, Norman Lowy is very good. Modern part, like First World War time around, onward, Norman Lowy is very good. Clear? Then again, अब एक और भी बात है, that if you do not want to go for mixing the books and you want to find them in one single compilation, then Gajanan Mathur is a single compilation where you can find all the chapters. Gajanan Mathur. Jain and Mathur. Are any clear with this? Manjot clear with this? अब फिर से देखिए. The name of the books I have told you already, but it is the basic book list that I have given. There are many other books as well. तो आपकी हालत ऐसी हो जाएगी. In 5.5 months, if you want to go for this, तो आपकी हालत कुछ ऐसी ही होगी. So first of all, I would ask you to read none. You should know the sources, because once you go to interview and suppose they're asking about some books, you would be able to deal with that. First of all, that is what you have to know. Second thing that you should know that why I'm asking you not to go for the reading of the books. Anyway, we'll discuss that in class, but then you should know that if you talk about the time, how many hours you can read daily? कब कितने घंटे पढ़ सकते हैं आप? This is maximum on daily basis. 9 to 10 hours, no? In 9 hours, suppose you are giving minimum 3 hours to the optional. Class 2 hours. We will discuss every source. We'll discuss the concept. I'll dictate you. 1 hour, maybe for revision. Maybe I'll ask the map that you point the locations in the map. Suppose 1 hour time you are giving to the optional, 3 hours time. Then you're left with just 5 to 6 hours for other studies, in which you'll have to manage GS. And then you have to manage current affairs. Then you have to go for writing practice, maybe in GS, maybe previous year questions, everything. Certainly, the time is less. The time is less, no? Then, here we are talking about GS and current affairs as well, because suppose you become a PhD holder in history. Just by studying optional 9 hours every day, that is not serving the purpose. You have to be good in every subject. You have to be good in every subject to be able to clear the exam. That's why you have to go for a very balanced and judicious study. Balanced and judicious study. So I would not ask you to read much in optional only. बहुत सारे टीचर बोलते हैं 5 घंटे पढ़िए, 6 घंटे पढ़िए, फिर बाकी चीजें कब पढ़ेंगे? Some of you are from GS batch. Already 4 hours of GS class would be there. So अगर 6 घंटे ऑप्शनल पढ़ रहे हैं और 4 घंटे GS में पढ़ रहे हैं, तो हालत खराब हो जाएगी. After 3 months, you'll feel like you're leaving UPSC preparation. You have to make it very sustainable. You have to make it very sustainable. And somewhere you all will have to make it very sustainable, because at this stage on your face, one thing is very clear. This is the first class, but let me tell you one thing, that all of you are looking stressed and slightly overexhausted with your UPSC preparation and the strategies. Simple strategy, very simple strategy, something that can be sustained 6 days a week. Try to study, and 1 day a week, try to take a break. Sunday should be break honi chahiye. Now, how to deal with the writing? Look, writing, and when you talk about optional, so first of all, whatever we go for studying, it should actually make you able to write the answers there in main. The first trouble that you will come across in mains would be the question tags. Now, what are different question tags and how to deal with them? First, another basic thing to start with, what are the question tags and how to deal with this? Gauri, clear with this? Now we are dealing with the question tags. Gauri, would you look that angry throughout the class? This is better. Gauri, if we talk about the question tags, first of all, there are some simpler question tags and there are some more difficult question tags to deal with. Basically, they are divided into 2 parts, linear and non-linear. Linear, where you do not have to do anything with the statement. They said the statement, just prove it. No? So there would be one statement and you will have to prove it. This is called linear dealing. This is called linear dealing. But suppose non-linear dealing of the question tag, what type of question tags they would be, where you have to discuss, First of all, I'll tell you linear question tags. Illustrate. First of them, what do you mean by illustrate? So by giving the examples, you make the statement clear. That is what is called illustrate. For example, if I say that Gupta period was the golden age in Sanskrit literature, illustrate. So you give the example, Kalidas, no? You give the example Amar Simha, so many other examples. And you illustrate by giving the examples. That is what is the word illustrate. I'll dictate. What's your good name? Shruti, I'll dictate. Just say this. Then elucidate. What is elucidate? Again, elucidate is same. The statement is given and you are writing to explain that, to make clear that statement. So basically you're proving that statement. No? Explain. Again, the same thing is there. You are writing it to explain one particular statement. These are called linear. These are called linear question tags. Now, there are some non-linear tags. Just try to understand. First, pehle samajhiye. Every time I discuss something, first I discuss and then I'll dictate. Second thing is that many of you might have come from engineering background, maybe from science background. Certainly, every time we'll start with very basic and then we will go to the UPSC level. Every time. We'll do that for every single chapter. Now, non-linear tags. One is comment. So there would be a statement and UPSC would ask you to comment upon that statement. So suppose when you're talking about comment, suppose there's a friend of you and you're doing, you're giving some comment on that person. So what you will do? You will give your own opinion about him or her, no? What is comment? Giving opinion. Giving opinion. But then when you start giving opinion, it can take sides. Positive and negative. That would start a debate. So jab bhi word aa gaya, comment. Now you have to start the debate. Now it's not linear. You have to show both the sides. You have to show both the sides. And then suppose the question tag is there. Gupta period was the golden age in ancient India. Comment. In Sanskrit literature, it was golden age. But sati was becoming so prevalent. The problem of untouchability was becoming so prevalent. Don't you think that in that way, societal parameter, certainly Gupta age cannot be considered as a golden age. So negative side is also there. And then no question would end without a conclusion. There might be one introduction, there might not be. Suppose you go to some person. You will have to introduce yourself. No? Suppose Sachin Tendulkar would go to any place. Maybe Sachin Tendulkar need not any introduction. Introduction ho bhi sakta hai, nahi bhi ho sakta hai. It would depend upon the answer. But conclusion is always there. The conclusion is always there. So whenever there is debate about positive and negative, Srivatsa, the conclusion can be mostly positive. That you say that there were some problems, but then still the age was big development in many areas. You have to conclude. So what is comment? Debate. Debate about both the aspects, positive, negative, and a conclusion. Just wait, just see this. Nandini will write. थोड़ी देर पहले समझेंगे. Then there's a very simple question tag, but this would directly ask you to discuss. But discussion can only be started when you talk about both positive and negative side. And there should be a conclusion. It's very similar to comment. You cannot treat in a different way. No, you cannot treat it in a different way. Basically, this would also generate positive and negative and a conclusion. But positive and negative both, so non-linear. Then there are two question tags, examine or critically examine. Examine or critically examine. Now think about it. Can you examine anything without being critical about it? No, you cannot. So basically, examine and critically examine, they're one and the same. They kabhi alag hai hi nahi. So whether UPSC says examine or whether UPSC says critically examine, it's one and the same. But suppose you give me a write-up and suppose I award you 2 marks out of 10. एक बच्चे ने देखा कि 2 ही marks दोगे. If you're scoring 20% at this stage, and by the time you're appearing into mains and you're scoring 60%, that is a target. Is it not a good start that you're getting 2 out of 10? पहले तो decide कर लीजिए कि दुखी कब होना है और खुश कब होना है. बहुत कंफ्यूज लगते हैं आप लोग मुझे. दुखी बहुत रहते हैं आप. तो किसी को 2 मार्क्स में तो खुश होने की बात है. 20% you're scoring out of 10. Very good on UPSC parameter. 60% you're scoring, you would be a topper. आप टॉपर बन जाएंगे. So to start with, 2 is a very good score, decent score, handsome score to start with. Suppose you get 2 out of 10. So then I have examined your paper. then I will have to let you know what were the good things because of which I have given you 2 marks. And then I will have to let you know in writing there, the pointers, what were the problems with your writing because of which I deducted 8. And I gave you 2 marks. That was the conclusion. So what we are doing here, positive point, negative point, and a conclusion. No, Rocky, Rachita, what we are doing here, positive, negative, and a conclusion. Same, debate. Then another question tag, evaluate or critically evaluate. Can you evaluate anything without being critical to it? Suppose you have to evaluate the non-cooperation movement. It was a great success, non-cooperation movement, because it prepared us for civil disobedience movement. But don't you think that it attracted the people also on the basis of religion? Gandhiji would be talking about Ram, and he would be using the Khilafat movement, attracting the Hindus and Muslims alike. It was a shortcut by Gandhiji, trying to create a unity among Hindus and Muslims in national movement. Rather than working for years, he brought suddenly unity between Hindus and Muslims. So what happened? That suddenly when the non-cooperation movement was withdrawn, what happened that overall the communal politics would rise again and the Hindu-Muslim unity breaks down again after non-cooperation movement. Manjot, clear with this? Rocky, clear with this? So don't you think that there was negative point as well of non-cooperation movement? थक नहीं सकते हम बिल्कुल भी. What's your good name? Got me. थक नहीं सकते हम बिल्कुल भी. So when you become critical, you can figure out it's both positive and negative. So you cannot evaluate anything without being critical about it. So both of them, they are same question tag. Then again, analyze and critically analyze. So can you analyze anything without being critical to it? No, you cannot. No, you cannot analyze anything without being critical to it. आपने बोला non-cooperation movement. Certainly Gandhian politics was on rise. And that is why non-cooperation movement was there in India. There is no doubt about this. But don't you think that had the First World War not created such a big economic crisis in India, it was difficult even for Gandhiji to start such a big mass movement here in India. You have to analyze it critically that it was just not Gandhiji. It was also World War that was leading to the start of non-cooperation movement. You cannot analyze anything without being critical to it. But then, can you examine anything without evaluating it? Can you evaluate anything without analyzing it? And can you analyze anything without examining it? नहीं कर सकते. ये सब एक ही है. अब आप इसको चाहे जितना कॉम्प्लिकेट कर लीजिए, ये इतना ही सिंपल है. ये सिर्फ एक ही बात है. You have to generate a debate and you have to put a conclusion. That's all. ज्यादा दिमाग नहीं लगाना. इतना ही करना है इन सब क्वेश्चन टैग में. Basically, you have to generate the positive and negative point. That is what is debate. And then you have to give a positive conclusion. That is what you have to do. इतनी simple सी बात करनी है. Then, again, I hope that all of you have my phone number. If anyone is looking for that, it's... So even after the class is over, you can drop me a message. If you have any doubts, you can always drop me a message. After the class, you can discuss the doubts with me as well. आप मुझे मैसेज भी भेज सकते हैं. I'll try to reply. और अच्छे वाले मैसेज भी भेजेंगे जिसमें डाउट्स भी अच्छे हों बहुत. कितने पूछे बैटल ऑफ प्लासी कब हुआ था? रात के 11 बजे. तो मेरी आत्मा शरीर से बाहर निकल जाती कि तुम ही रिप्लाई कर दो इसका. रहने दो, मुझसे नहीं हो पाएगा ये. सोच के अच्छे से काम वाले सारे मैसेजेस भेज देंगे. And I'll reply all of that. But then see some questions. First of all, do not write anything. पहले समझिए. Suppose if I say that the people of ancient India, I'm starting with the first simple topic, Ramila Thapat would say perceptions of the past. So perception of the past to start with, and like so many other things, but I'm starting with a question first of your UPSC level. Suppose if there's a question that says that people of ancient India lack the historical sense, that they have no sense of writing history, and the question is elucidate, then you have to write just negative points. Because then you will have to prove that the people in India in ancient age did not have the tradition of history writing. For example, if you talk about ancient time, they would talk about the writing, the time, like Treta Yuga, no, Dwapar Yuga, Kali Yuga. Again, it would come back to the same position. So you cannot figure out chronology at all. Certainly, there are so many problems in history writing in India, no? So you have to talk about the problems because the question tag is elucidate. Make this a statement clear. Do not try to give positive points here. You cannot give because your place is not asking you to do that. Suppose I change the question that people of ancient India lack the historical sense. Comment. You have to give your own opinion. So I think that maybe certainly there are so many other things which are also there that can prove that the people in India they had the tradition of history writing. There are many points that would also prove in a positive way. So that is comment. So comment is opinion. अब एक छोटी सी बात समझिए. If comment, नन्ही खोए बच्चे, if comment is opinion, don't you think that in ancient India we were not there? Srivatsa, Deksha, तब तो हम थे नहीं. How do you know about ancient India? Through the books. Do not try to be a historian. If Romila Thapar thinks in a way in which you also think, that is the headache of Romila Thapar. उन्होंने पूछा अपने view दीजिए, your view, what you think. But if I think in some way in which Bipan Chandra, Romila Thapar and Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, they also think the same way, that is their headache. ये तो उनकी बात थी. How you derive the views, your opinions from the standard book. So every book, standard book, from where we have to give the opinions. Here the question would change, the similar question. The people of ancient India lack the historic sense. Discuss. You have to start generating a discussion. And at times there would not be any question tag. For example, is there any evidence of an interest in preserving the memory of the past of a historic tradition in ancient India, in ancient text? Certainly, then you have to talk about both positive and negative. Then, was in ancient India a sense of writing history? This is the same question. Again, we have to start a debate. So at times there would be no question tag, but still it would ask you to start a general debate. A simple सी बात ये है that when you have to introduce here, the introduction, look, first of all, the entire notes write up in optional would be in question answer format, because above all, you have to write the answers there in exam. So each time you write 2 hours here in class, it should help you practice 4 or 5 questions every day, along with the studying history. It should be question answer writing format so that you get very accustomed to writing answers. अब एक छोटी सी बात बताइए, suppose we have to introduce in this question, don't you think that different historians like Romila Thapar, like R.S. Sharma, like the Western thinkers or Western historians, they all have different opinions. Some of them would say no historic tradition in India. Some of them, they would say, yes, there was historic tradition. So the question is that when the historians themselves do not agree about something, why you are taking the burden to decide it by yourself, like the nature of the revolt of 1857. No historian would agree with each other. Then why we should agree? First of all, we have to write here in introduction that different historians, they give very different opinions about whether there was any tradition of history writing in India or not. So that would make it very clear to the examiner what you are going to write. We are going to debate it. We are going to debate it. Then we have to talk about the positive and negative points. No? So write down a simple introduction. Introduction. I'm giving you just one introduction. There can be any that you can write. I'm just giving you one of the introductions. No? That is feasible here. Then introduction has to be very simple, because suppose you have to write 200, 250 words, and suppose 50 words you are using that in introduction, that would waste the word, that would consume the space. That is why the introduction has to be very simple. The conclusion also would have to be very simple. Rachita, Shiva, Bhavani. Why conclusion has to be very simple? Again, because that is the concluding line only. Second, it should not consume many words, because the main body of the answer would also have to be written. Every day when you see Hindu newspaper, Jainism says that everything and everyone and everything has a soul. ये कहता है Jainism. Hindu also has a soul. So जो सुबह बरसात में फेंक कर आप भागा है ना दिल्ली में, वो जो भीग रहा है ना हिंदू गुस्से में, Hindu newspaper, the 2 editorials. What do you mean by editorials? क्या है editorial? in the middle of the newspaper, the two little write-ups that you will get. The two little write-ups that you get, it is something that is called editorial. And if you see these editorials, a single line introduction and a single line conclusion would be there. So every day when you're going through the editorial as well, you're getting a very good introduction and a very good conclusion as well. So now we will divide the debate into two parts: in support and against it, refute. Write on first, in support, in support, in support of the tradition of history writing, in support. Gauri, clear with this? Gauri, you're still looking very angry. This is better, Gauri. I hope that you're not trying to get the information from me by making me feel afraid. No? Anyway, I'll teach all the things. Now, if you talk about in favor and you talk about against it, in favor and against it. First, I'm starting with in favor. Do not write anything. मत लिखिए कुछ, पहले समझने की कोशिश करिए. First, once we understand something and then we write, it is like revision. It is like revision. So when you go home, give half an hour to revise what I have dictated you. Maybe when you're going back in metro, revise it then itself. आप मेट्रो में रिवाइज कर लीजिए और घर जाके कहानी पढ़ लीजिए, मुझे ज्यादा खुशी होगी. Above all, यूपीएससी प्रिपरेशन इज नॉट पनिशमेंट. आपको सजा नहीं दी गई है 1.5 साल की कि इसको बहुत सजा दी गई है 1.5 साल की, मतलब जेल की, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. इट इज गोइंग टू बी एब्सोल्यूट फन. ये बहुत मजेदार प्रिपरेशन होने वाला है, तो बहुत मजे करेंगे और बहुत पढ़ेंगे. Now, when we talk about the positive points, in favor, Srivatsa, see this and try to understand. Don't you think that if you talk about Vedic text, don't we think that in Rig Veda we get the reference of the battle of Dasarajana? Those who are just new to this, the battle of Dasarajana, this is the first explanation and a reference of a historic political expansion by the Aryans in India, where the Bharata king was Sudasa. And he defeated a confederation of 10 kings in India. Thus Rajana, 5 Aryan and 5 non-Aryan. This is the first example of political expansion by the Aryans in India. So, history. Then, don't you think that so many Janpads are mentioned, like Kurukshetra, Panchal? No, we have historic reference of that. No, and when you talk about all these historic references in later Vedic literature that we get, certainly that is all history. History is there. You cannot say that history was not there in writing in India. Vedic literature has a very clear evidence of history. Indraprasth, no, is also mentioned in Vedic literature. Indraprasth is also known even now. Indraprasth, the place, archaeological evidences are also there. It's history which has got reflected. Then don't you think that the Vedas, they would mention, the later Vedas, they would mention about so many dan stutis. So the bigger rulers, they would give so much of donation, and that would be depicted in the form of hymns, dan stutis, gathas. No, the big achievements of the different personalities mentioned there in the form of gathas. So that all is given in Vedic literature. That is clear example of history writing, first of all. Selina, clear with this? Then, if you talk about the Puranas, so many Puranas, like suppose Vishnu Puran, Bhagavad Puran, they have very clear reference of the Mauryas, of the Guptas, and so many dynasties. Think about it, the Puranas are very critical of the Mauryas. Because the Mauryas supported Buddhism and Jainism, certainly they were very critical of the Mauryas. So they wrote a lot, many negative things about the Mauryas. पर किसी की शिकायत करने के लिए भी बात तो करनी पड़ेगी. So the Puranas, when they would give this description and you remove the bias out of it, then you get a very good history of the dynasties like the Mauryas, like the Haryanka, like you talk about maybe Gupta dynasty, so many dynasties. The Puranas, they have the clear evidence. Then again, takne wale hum? Tak rahe hum bas? Takna nahi hai bilkul. Then again, if you talk about epics like Mahabharata, epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, in Sanskrit literature, they are called itihasa. Itihas. As something happened, that was written. As something happened, that was written. Itihas. Certainly, historic references would come from the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ayodhya, Kurukshetra, historic evidences. Then don't you think that Upendra Singh would say that we get so many references of Sutas and Magdas? Sutas and Magdas, who were those? They were the poets and the bards. They were the poets and the bards. They would describe about the rulers and different type of achievements of them from one generation to another. They would pass on the knowledge. So certainly they carried history. South, Sangam literature, was it not history? In fact, if you talk about extreme south and you talk about the Cheras, Choras, and the Pandyas, we come to know about them just through the Sangam literature. Certainly, it was history. It was history. Without Sangam literature, you cannot form the history of Deep South. Not possible. Tamilakam history can only be formed with the help of Sangam literature. The Buddhist literature, आपने बोला Deepavamsa, Mahavamsa, giving the Mauryan history. Because the Mauryas supported, Ashoka supported Buddhism, a lot of historic references would come from Jataka stories, from Deepavamsa, from so many Buddhist literature. A very clear history is there. Not only this, there are many royal biographies which have been written. No? By the end of ancient time and the start of early medieval time, even if you talk about the biographies written about Harshvardhan, no, so many others, they are a very clear example that history was being written in India. And what about Prayag Prashasti of Samudragupta? What we know about Samudragupta, mainly we know through the Prayag Prashasti of Samudragupta. Was it not history? Without this, how we would have reconstructed history of Samudragupta? Not possible. Can you talk about Shaka era? You talk about Gupta era? You talk about Vikram era? Don't you think that even the idea of chronology was there? It was not as bad as it has been depicted by the Western scholars. There was some idea of the eras, of the chronology. There is no doubt about this. So there are so many points that would support that there was a tradition of history writing in India. So first, in favor. So this was in support. This was in support. But then many historians, they would not agree that there was any sense of history writing in India. Why they would not agree? What was the problem? What was the problem? Now the problem area. Now the problem area. Refute. Now we have to discuss about the refute. Why we should not consider that there was proper history writing in ancient India. First trouble. Don't you think that if you talk about the history writing in India, its concept was basically very different from the modern way of history writing that we have conceived through the Western historians. For example, in Mahabharata, in Ramayana, in Puranas, what has been depicted? Something that will give you the ideological and moral teaching. Political history was not that important for us at all. That was very important for the Westerners. No, for Westerners, the political history wars, that was very important. For us, the moral and ideological teaching was far more important. So basically, our concept was very different compared to the Western historians. Then the trouble is that history is there, but a lot of mythology is mixed into that. For example, in Puranas, you're talking about the Satavahanas, like Gautami Putra Satkarni, and you start getting history. But suddenly, Gautami Putra Satkarni would start talking to Garud. और आपके फरिश्तों के होश उड़ जाएंगे कि अब ये कैसी हिस्ट्री है जिसमें द वाहना विष्णु सडनली अपीयर गरुड़ा एंड स्टार्टेड टॉकिंग विद गौतमी पुत्र सतकर्णी. अब ये तो बड़ी अजीब बात हो गई. When mythology is so much mixed with history, it's very difficult to delineate where is history and where is mythology. Where is history and where is mythology? That is the trouble. That is the trouble. Rocky, clear with this? Manjot, clear with this? Then, don't you think that mostly the Indian literature has been religious in nature? So a lot many rituals would be described. Lot many rituals. कि prelims के पहले दही खा के जाना. मैं सच बता रहा हूँ, अगर दही खाने से रिजल्ट अच्छा हो, मैं सुबह सुबह सारे कैंडिडेट्स के यहाँ खुद जाकर एक एक हांडी दही देकर आऊंगा. पर अभी तक का मेरा एक्सपेरिमेंट, मेरा डेटा ये कहता है कि दही का प्रीलिम से कोई कनेक्शन नहीं है इस रिचुअल का. अगर किसी बच्चे ने ठीक से पढ़ाई नहीं की है, दही खा के कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. तो पढ़ेंगे. And you know, when you capitalize on this time, देखिए, you have joined optional now. It would be putting slightly more burden on you. But trust me, when you cover the things much before prelims, then you are actually in a position to capitalize on time. Otherwise, with the advance of the time, the pressure would keep on growing on you. Pressure बहुत बढ़ जाएगा. अभी capitalize करेंगे. But no matter what, start with magazine of current affairs. No matter what. आज से, suppose you started history optional, today is the day to start with current affairs magazine, focus magazine, कोई भी magazine, current affairs focus magazine, because newspaper is journalism, magazine is, no, when talk about focus magazine, no, focus magazine is exam oriented, how the same information is converted for exam format. So आधे घंटे भी सही, but now start with current affairs. Religion and rituals, they are so much explained there that the bias is towards representing religious and the ritualistic aspect, not exactly history. Again, don't you think about Rig Veda. What is the time period of Rig Vedic age? 1500 BC to 1000 BC. This is the time period of Rig Vedic age. So when you talk about this Rig Vedic age, don't you think that for nearly 500 years, this Rig Veda was being compiled? Even this was not the time it was written. It was written much later. Exactly. So for a long time, it was not actually written. So when actually the manuscripts were written and actually the knowledge was there, they're quite different from each other. Suppose you read a part and you try to figure out the history from there. You should know the time. What time you're talking about? Suppose the economic part, this type of rice was getting produced. Then you will have to figure out which part they are talking about, what time they are talking about. It's difficult to get the time here because the literature was compiled for hundreds of years. Exactly to pinpoint the chronology, it's not that easy. Then again, don't you think that if you talk about hundreds of years, suppose even Rig Veda was compiled, you cannot say that who was the exact author of Rig Veda because multiple people, they might have compiled that. If you do not know about the author, can you figure out about the biases? If you do not know about the biases, you cannot figure out exact history. For example, आपने बोला Harshcharit, written by Ban Bhatt. Ban Bhatt was the court poet of Harshvardhan. He was being paid. आपने बोला प्रयाग प्रशस्ति. Prayag Prashasti, written by Hari Sen, was also the court poet, was being paid by Samudragupta. Don't you think that they would always praise the ruler? They would always praise the ruler. At times, there would be exaggeration. So we know the biases. आपको पता है biases. But in Rig Veda, suppose for hundreds of years, such literatures they were getting compiled, you do not know the exact author. And if you do not know the exact author, basically do not know the biases. Then it is mostly literature. Literature is full of drama. Drama is imagination. Don't you think that when drama was imagination, it was like, it's very difficult to prove it through history or archaeology. No, they talked about heavenly palaces. We have not found even a brick from there. ईंट तक नहीं मिली है वहां पर. It's very difficult to prove this imagination. Exaggeration would be much. आपने बोला क्षीर सागर, ocean of milk. कहाँ मिलेगा ये क्षीर सागर ज्योग्राफी में? इंद्रजीत सर और मयंक सर से पूछना ही पड़ेगा. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to figure out the exact things there. Then, don't you think about the literature like Dharma Shastras? They said that what should be there in society. They did not tell you what was exactly the situation. Think about Artha Shastra of Kautilya. Kautilya let you know exactly what was going on. Practical things. But Dharma Shastras and other such things, certainly, they talked about what should be there in society, not actually what was going on. Certainly, you cannot figure out exact history there. Then the concept of time is very problematic. आपने बोला त्रेता युग, no? आपने बोला कृता युग, फिर आपने बोला त्रेता, then आपने बोला द्वापर, and then you said Kali Yug, and again कृता युग. कृता, त्रेता, द्वापर, and again, you talk about Kali Yuga. Don't you think that time in Indian context is circular? It's not linear. It is not increasing in linear way. It is coming back to circle. So after Kali Yuga, again there would be destruction and recreation. The time would come back again. It's very difficult to verify the chronology because the time would be cyclically repeating itself. Time repeat kar raha hai apne aap ko. It's cyclic concept. It's not linear like in general that we know about time. It's very difficult then to figure out about this. Now, if you talk about the problems, don't you think that in conclusion, we have to conclude it positively? Ramila Thapar would be a good conclusion. Ramila Thapar would be a good conclusion. Ramila Thapar says that it was not that there was no history writing in India. But only thing is that unlike the Western type, that was externalized history, it was a different form. It was embedded history. In rituals, in religion, in drama, history was there, but it was embedded. You have to take it out. It is not externalized, explicit history as there in West. Second, only that thing was mentioned which was basically ideological and moral for us, giving you some teaching. No, giving you some teaching. Maybe the political history that was very important for the West, certainly it was not there. So it was not that history writing was not there, but certainly it was in a different form. It was in a different form. So if we take Romila Thapar, anyone cannot question that conclusion at all. Nahi kar sakta hai question. So very simple. Conclusion should be there, but yes, there are many refutes as well. Now write down refute. Refute. एक बच्चे ने पूछा है कैन वी पुट देयर इंडिका एज वेल? इंडिका एज वेल. तो अब एक बात, छोटी सी बात, दैट व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट इंडिका, it was written by Megasthenes. Now two problems are there. First, they're talking about history writing tradition in India. Mainly we have to talk about Indian tradition. Otherwise, it's, if you talk about Megasthenes, that would be like Greek source. No, you talk about a Greek source to know about India. Second thing, even Indica was full of problem because Megasthenes was in the court of Chandragupta Maurya and he was writing about entire India without knowing much about India, without visiting the places, just by talking to the people. That is why he would make so many mistakes in Indica as well.